Welcome to another episode of Mind, Body, Spirit Panel, a sub-series of the Angels, Positivity, and Love show here on YouTube. We've got three panelists that are back joining us for another incredible conversation to be. I am excited to have them back. They totally connected last time they were on the last Mind, Body, Spirit panel. I'm super excited to welcome Paul Sugar out of Arizona, 50 years of mindfulness, meditation, and much more. Dr. Leanne Whitney, depth psychologist, author, guest show host on a pretty big show out there, and again, much more going on for her. And also Iwan Brioc out of Wales, the UK, theater director, non-duality teacher. All of them are just some of the best experts you could ever listen to when it comes to the human condition. What's this all about? And basically the theater of life. Are we up here? Are we down here? So hearty welcome to all three of you. It's great to see you all again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you, Michael.
Pleasure to be here, always.
So the first question is really the theater of life. What is it? And how are we all on a journey, whether we know it or not, to get out of thinking one version of reality to something that's bigger? So if it's bigger than this, what is the it and what is the this? Who would like to start waxing philosophical here?
I don't know, you said theater of life. That seems to be Iwan's area of expertise.
Iwan.
Well, yeah, I mean, theater of life is there's a Sanskrit word, isn't there, Leela? I think for play, and that's related to Maya, this illusion of a world of forms out there. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my work is very much about helping us, and I forget all the time. This is something my mind is always pulled into this idea of a reality out there, but through theater with other people, you get these glimpses, these wonderful glimpses that, hey, this is all theater. I'm just a character in this, and I'm making it up as I go along. And the weird thing is that realization creates this deep relief and peace. You know, and that's what I aim for in my theater work, and I call it proprioception, and it's wonderful when it happens, but very quickly the mind gets involved and it gets forgotten. And we take this all very seriously.
Wasn't it you who said the whole world's stage?
It wasn't me, no, that was another guy called Shakespeare.
Yeah. Oh, right. I keep getting you and he mixed up.
So Leanne, remember to remember, if you can remember, when you remember to remember, what's this all about again? I forgot.
Well, I kind of want to pick up on this idea of expansion. What's it all about in the flow of transformation and integration? And I think that's definitely one of the key ways you could phrase the touch points between all of us actually here. And when there's too much rigidity or contraction, that's like a red flag. The uncomfortability of the contraction is the signal that something is bound. It's a stress point. It's a heaviness. It's something in what we would call in depth psychology, in the unconscious, in the invisible. It's something we want to bring from darkness to light. What aren't we seeing about ourselves? And that could be shame, apathy, things that really contract the human condition. So that's what I just want to point to right now, is getting really clear on the signals of what contraction is and how we want to sort of transcend and then expand past that contraction point and start to feel that freedom in the body and mind.
Paul, she mentioned the body. What have you got for us?
Well, I've got a body here. Oh, just one, but yeah, I guess it can do for now. Let's see. Maybe I'll talk briefly about your question regarding how big everything is. Um, let's see. I'm not used to talking briefly about this subject, but let me see. Let me see if I can compress it. In 1969, I had a near-death experience. And looking back, I realized that that was a pivotal experience for me, because shortly thereafter, things started to change dramatically for me. I started to get drawn into people and groups who were interested in the things that we're talking about, meditation and consciousness, so forth and so on. And then I started my meditation practice around then, using yoga and mindfulness and the Kaballah to develop a system of meditation. And what it did was it sort of opened me up to those, what's a good word? Paranormal experiences. Paranormal, is that a good word? Well, it's stuff like out of body travel, remote viewing, all the things that you've read about started to come upon me without me trying. It was really all very spontaneous. And one of the major takeaways that came to me from these types of experiences, and I'm speaking right now specifically the astral travel stuff, where I would find myself out there in the universe and was able to see and travel to various stars and planets and galaxies and so forth and so on. And what I realized and saw, actually, with, I don't know if you could call them my eyes, but whatever way I was seeing, I saw that that's where I saw the infinite and how big everything was. And that there was really no dark space, I mean, there was stuff everywhere. I could see the various dimensions on every planet and star, and realized that I could clothe myself, maybe is a better word. I could clothe myself with the matter of each dimension if I wanted to matriculate in that dimension. So I learned a lot just by doing those kinds of travels. But probably, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, that phrase that you said, Mike, that it's so big, and that's what I came away with. If I had to really distill all the years of experiences that I've had with those kinds of things, it could be distilled in your statement. This is really big. There's a lot of stuff going on, just a lot of stuff going on.
It's like trying to hand out speeding tickets at the Indy 500 is how I'd say it. But you know what? Our human thinking, it's possible. Maybe we get one of those t-shirt guns to shoot a lot of tickets out. We might hit one windshield somewhere. Okay, Iwan, to you, a couple of quick quotes, and then take it where you will. And you've had enough life experiences, whether it was in the last panel you mentioned a severe illness that rearranged a lot for you and shifted things, consciousness coming out. And people should go back and check that panel out. You three were brilliant. So please hit the share, subscribe, like button and comment while you're there. Ego is fear, wasted time, and energy. Eckhart Tolle said, ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. And I'll just do it in a sort of Plato way. There's a lot going on up here. And you know what? The second you just let go, the second the broader reality creeps in, slips in, pops up, life has a way of showing up in the most unusual ways. You've dedicated your life to this, Iwan. Talk to us more about this.
Well, I think ego has a lot of bad press. So I want to speak up for the ego. I think the ego helps us to manage. There's an American author, Dick Schwartz, you probably come across his work. He talks about these different parts of us that we're fragmented, and parts of us are protective, parts of us are firefighters, other parts are exiled, but there are also these parts that are good managers. And the ego is managing all these fragmented parts. It's doing its best. And I think trying to get rid of the ego, I think it's Alcoholics Anonymous that say the self can't get out of the self. You know, you can't find the Buddha with the Buddha. So it's a road to ruin to try and get rid of your ego. So that's what I'd say about that. You referred to this illness I had, and that was in my early 20s when I'd followed the path of kind of logic, if you like, through Jiddu Krishnamurti to really try to get to the bottom of what all this is. And I was presented with this vast emptiness. I mean, we say it's full of stuff, but I think when you're not in it, it just looks empty. When you recognize your natural state, there can be a just sense of horror that this character isn't real, and that there's the reaction to it. And my reaction was initially psychological, but then it had a physical effect, and I had all kinds of diagnoses for a few years, and it took me a while to start to embody. I don't know if I ever have embodied this really, but it was a reconciliation and a befriending of this reaction, which is totally natural for the ego to go, holy hell, run for your life. And once that door is open, it's all this energy is used to try and keep it closed, just to be able to function. And I'm really interested in Leanne's work about transformation integration, because I had nobody to help me to integrate this. And there was a lot of, you know, crippling fatigue, I guess you'd call this, physical manifestation of it. And I know a lot of healers who've gone through this and just surrendered and become healers. So maybe it's a common occurrence in this world.
Like Black Elk, Leanne has also had a physical series of challenges early on that, again, helped her pop out of thinking into more consciousness that allowed her to eventually help others, not just herself. I'll mention just big picture, awareness is on the horizon for mankind. Thinking is not in the cards to go away at all. But one angel said 7% less thinking a day. You could say week, month, year, it's all the same thing, is the Olympic gold medal, or the Olympic gold medal standard for us all. 7% less thinking. If people want to grab a calculator, figure it out, great. Last little bit here. It is when you're thinking you can't be love. If you're thinking about giving a hug to a dog, that's not giving a hug to the dog. Just do it. Action with no thought is being in the moment. Good luck with that, folks. It's remember to remember if you can. Leanne, can you tie it all together for us about what goes on up here, down here, and again, what's that all about?
Tie it all together. Wowza. Okay, well, let me sort of start with just a few threads of where we've been for sure. I like to think of the ego as the functional organizing principle. As long as we're not taking ownership of consciousness, you just want that it's energy and information flow. And it's vast and it's big and it's multidimensional and there's, you know, many states. But if we allow the flow, then we're literally in flow and in that synchronicity of being fully present to the energy and information as it is quite literally flowing. So that's the way I like to think about it, because you want discernment. And if the ego is part of that process of discernment, you know, the ego is a very abstract idea that we kind of made literal. It's like, what is it really? I do think in some of the liberatory systems of thought, in particular yoga, when they talk about manas and ahamkara, they sort of delineate in more clearly what certain aspects of mind are doing. But ego for me is this idea of just taking ownership, and we don't want to be doing that, but we do want discernment. Discernment is really important. And even in the, if you think about it in terms of angels or demons, like the information that's coming through, you want to be able to discern is this beneficial? And I think that's one, again, signposts are just one clear way to think about it. Is this beneficial? Is it beneficial to me? Is it beneficial to my family, to my community, to the larger collective? Or am I doing it more just for self-service as opposed to like a selfless being in service too? So I don't know that I summed everything up, but I did my best.
I like it. I'll do a couple more quotes and we'll go to Paul. For individuals, an egoless path would be great, but it's just not realistic. Allow ego to serve as a reminder when it pops up, a reminder for what you decide, a reminder to breathe, a reminder to enjoy each moment as it comes. Believe that all moments can be the same, whether it's a moment at work or in nature. And a reminder that being in the moment is to do compassion for all. And I'm going to get back on ego for a second, back on that horse. Ego is a temporary lack of compassion is another way to look at it. Paul, can you talk to us about ego, thinking, the heart, compassion, kindness? What is your take, having done this for a long time?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Iwan. The ego gets a bad rap. And depending, of course, how you define ego, but, you know, in the traditional way of defining ego, the bottom line to me is we need something to walk around in around here. And that's the ego. You know, the ego is, I guess you could say it's synonymous with the body. And so if we don't have a body, we don't have an ego. If we don't have an ego, we don't have a body. So we need that ego / body in order to matriculate on Earth. It's just the way things are here. There's a lot of talk nowadays about how Earth is a simulation and so forth and so on. You know, the Matrix and all that stuff and multiple dimensions, and people are kind of getting lost in that talk. You know, it's like science through the quantum theory stuff is starting to smell the coffee, but they're not quite there yet. But I think what it's doing is, because it's not quite there yet, it's confusing a lot of people. And so to me, the important thing is whether this is a simulation or not. The key phrase is we need to work as if it's real. So if we're working as if it's real, those are the rules of the game here. So whether it's not real or whether it's real, you know, you need to work as if it is real. I mean, you might be able to argue, well, you know, jumping off a bridge, I'm just going to float down to the bottom. And because I can be an interdimensional being. But the chances are, if you jump off the Golden State Bridge, you're going to have a completely different experience than that. You're going to hit the water real hard. So you need to know what the rules are here on Earth, and you need to abide by those rules. And that's part of what the ego does. You know, it's part of what the body does. It comes to an understanding about how things work, you know, and that was a lot of my out-of-body stuff was attending a school. I did that for like 20 years, at least 2 or 3 times a week, where I would attend the school, and the subject always was, how do things work? You know, not just here on Earth, but in the universe and so forth and so on. So it becomes important to learn and accept the rules of the game right here and now. And that's what the ego does. And that's what the body does for us.
Paul,
That's our clothing. That's our clothing. You know, we put our clothes on every morning, right? And so I'll give mindfulness a shot here. What mindfulness does through the medium of attention is it puts our body on for us. You know, it's not enough just to put our clothes on. We have to put our body on too. And it's the practice of mindfulness through the medium of attention that really allows us to wear our body each day.
you get to choose your thoughts, you get to choose your clothes you wear, and you get to choose where you're putting yourself. Paul, you had classmates in those those classes you were taking, can you just take 10 seconds to mention quite an extraordinary journey you've had on those, we'll call them universal trips?
You mean you want to know about my classmates?
Yeah. You might have met some other students, even if you didn't
Yeah,
chat with them much, but just 10 seconds on that.
yeah. Most of them seem sort of human, some of them not so much. Once again, there's an understanding of, well, what is human, what's consciousness. You know, I was dealing more with an awareness of their consciousnesses than I was with their bodies. Same thing with the teachers. You know, there were different flavors of consciousness there, and not so much awareness of the forms, but there were definite forms as well.
So love and above is what we're talking about here. And that's back to Iwan. Talk to us about love. If you want compassion, kindness, gentleness, and I'm going to throw in humor, and I'm going to do a dad joke because I don't think we did on a single dad joke in any of these panels, and it's a must. Santa's reindeer, Blitz and Dancer, just those two. Why do those two reindeer, nobody at home needs to remember who they are, why do Blitzen and Dancer drink so much coffee? Answer, because they're Santa's Starbucks. And if you're laughing, you're here. Iwan, to you, humor, love, gentleness, the stuff that sparkles that Disney was in business for 100 years. What makes the world go round?
Well, I'm extending a lot of love to my neighbor right now who started to mow his lawn. I hope it's, no, you can't hear it.
Can't
That's
hear
good.
it. You're good.
Yeah. But, you know, when you asked for questions for this, one that came up for me was, can there be love without peace? And I'm not talking about peace in the world, but inner peace, you know, and you mentioned about there cannot be compassion with thought. And I think it's the same thing. It's when we find peace within, and it connects to Leanne's contraction. When we notice that contraction and we can relax it, and peace arrives, what emerges is love or benevolence, if you like, or the beloved. But again, holding that with compassion is to recognize that thoughts are part of this too. All of it, the ego, thoughts, struggle, suffering. It's all part of this play. And as the wonderful Paul Hedderman says, you know, the aim is to just travel a little lighter if we can. One thing that comes up when we talk about ego and the absence of it, because you talked about how it's the rules of the game, that also extends to behavior, doesn't it? And one of the things that had come up recently in the world of non-duality is some teachers' behavior has become questionable in the relations. And the wonderful Jack O'Keefe has actually stepped away from teaching non-duality to kind of police this. So that's an interesting aspect of the ego. In its absence, are we also not taking responsibility for our behavior sometimes?
And Leanne, we're coming to you, but again, I'm throwing in two more quotes. They're not meant to be hand grenades, just food for thought. Ignore them or run with them. But Chogyam Trungpa in 2020, way past his passing over in 1987 or 88, said, this journey is real, talking about, though, the trip from here to here, more real than the waking dream of your usual life. Pay attention. In other words, the opportunity the universe is always providing us in each moment. And also ego, and this is Angels saying this, ego is what helps one fade from the present. It blocks happiness, not trying to beat a dead horse. But Leanne, talk to us something about how we engage the flows within us and around us.
Oh my gosh, it's all so beautiful. And actually, speaking of that guest hosting gig I have on New Thinking Aloud, the next episode I have to be released, I interviewed Roland McCready, who's the director of research at the HeartMath Institute. And I love HeartMath and everything that they stand for, and all the research that they do. And, you know, if you just take your mind and put it into your heart, and then think about something that you're grateful for and breathe and connect these two places. it's a really great, and it can be just an easy tool to use throughout the day. If the mind is busy and moving in a lot of directions. And like Iwan, I'm throwing love to my neighbors because I now have the gardeners blowing leaves right outside my window to my right. So I hope you're not all picking up on that noise. Side note there. And in also in the yoga or the Indian liberatory traditions, this term, the Hriydam, Hriydam, I believe it's spelled. My Sanskrit is not good, but it's that this idea of the energetic heart. So yes, we have a heart that beats in our body, and the heart rate variability is really indicative to the states of coherence that we can all achieve. And that has to do with how the mind is relating to the body. So yes, we have the literal physical heart. And then we have, if you will, the heart chakra, anahata, which is defined as the sound that is made when two things are not struck. So therefore, we're in balance and we're in this non-dual place. There's not two things striking. Again, we're in the flow. And then we're connected into the energetic heart of the universe. I think Ramana Maharishi was one of the greatest teachers about this idea. So it's heart all the way. They often say, I think in physics, turtles all the way down. It's literally like the heart all the way down, love all the way down. And just diving into what Paul had said earlier about reality and everything that's spinning around us now about simulation and what is real. For me personally, having had a non-dual experience, pure consciousness event, to me, consciousness is the foundational reality. It's the only thing that there is ultimately. And so the experience is a transformation of consciousness. That's and the awareness is the ability to be aware of the contents as they change, but those contents are literally consciousness itself. It's pure perception. So Paul also earlier said, I don't know really where the eyes were. I mean, those eyes are everywhere. And that's also one symbol in the Indian liberatory traditions is Indra's net. And there's just eyes everywhere at the intersection of that net. So this is a transformation of consciousness, and the ability to get in that flow of integration has everything to do with the heart, both physically with our heart rate variability and the level of coherence we can attain between the mind and the body, and then connecting into the heart of the universe, if you will. At that point, it's beyond name. It's just the energetics of the flow of love, really, and that's really kicks us up. Love, flow, to me, they're working hand in hand.
Beautiful, Leanne. I'm going to read a quick passage. Paul's going to close out this chapter. I'll blow some sage for everybody, and then with everyone's permission, you'll put your hands up and see if you can feel each other's energies through the screen. At that point, a lightning round begins that we kind of kidded about last year, which is you each get to ask each other a question, and it's going to be wonderful. And I know there's a ringer in the crowd who has an entire show on YouTube about life, but what is this? And 4 simple questions. That would be Iwan. So he'll be starting it off and choosing a victim. It'll either be Paul or Leanne. First a passage, then to Paul Sugar. And you get to retaliate with a beautiful philosophical question back. So fair is fair. Paul, you're going to either respond to this, carry on from Leanne, or Iwan, or all the above. This is a quick note from angels, and it's the biggest eternal question. What's up with mankind? Why are angels so available now? But it's more about awareness for mankind is on the horizon. Call it a spiritual awakening if you wish. It's a chance for all to grow. Mankind is ready for more unconditional love and compassion for all. And more compassion by all for all is needed. Mankind is ready for change from rat race mode. Happiness is obtained in the absence of ego. Ego is afraid to be vulnerable, to let go and be in the unknown. Again, there's nothing to lose and nothing to gain. Move past seeing the negative. Paul, what can you just sum up for us, either from what Leanne said, what that was about, what Iwan said, or what you were talking about before? but you got to close out this chapter before we blow some sage and really put the screws on each other.
Well, I'll address the Great Awakening. I think myself for sure, and what I see is other people in our space are experiencing, not just for themselves, but seeing in other people that there is, in fact, a Great Awakening taking place. And so I see it in lots of people, in my classes, people I'm working with, things like that. It's just it just seems to be self-evident, and like I said, beginning with myself, I see that in myself, but I also see it tremendously over the world, dealing with people one-on-one in groups, listening to podcasts, what other people are thinking and experiencing. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening with humanity en masse. And so I would agree with that quote that you read, that there is a great awakening taking place. For sure, it's been talked about for the longest time, but I think we're actually in the midst of it right now. It's not going to happen. It is happening and has been happening. I believe will continue to intensify and it continue its path to awaken more and more people.
Iwan, I have to light sage here that everybody gets to smell through 2 screens in 2030. If they're in Germany, New Zealand, it doesn't matter. But that's going to be a 20-second window for you while I'm lighting to just comment on what you're seeing in terms of more consciousness, more this, more that, while I'm lighting some sage here. You have a quick addendum to add to Paul's comments?
And there's definitely the word I use is consilience between science and spirituality. I think that maybe is one of the biggest indicators of it, the curiosity with consciousness and where it comes from, and the inability to find it in the brain. I think that that those bringing together like two snakes winding around each other is indicative that as a civilization we're moving to a different plane of existence.
Brilliant. Sage smoke. Why settle for linear? You can absolutely have sage. It's wonderful. Catch sage. But if anybody wants to go crazy, absolutely ask the universe to bring you flowers. A smell of floral from Bora Bora, not boring. Fiji, Nantucket, Rosa rugosa, lavender, honeysuckle. If anybody wants to breathe through their mouth, or you're a nose breather, either way, the shoulders go up and down. It's like turning the volume up if you need a little extra help. And if you really need help, ask the universe angels to step in to get you out of the head into the heart and bring it to you. The trifecta is ask for your favorite ocean that you haven't had in a while. You can't be standing on the beach picking that ocean. Pick a different one. Hawaii, Azores, Seychelles, Rehoboth, anywhere. Can I just see a show of hands if you're smelling sage, or a thumbs up? Iwan, any sage hitting you there in the UK?
I'm surrounded by plants here. Everything.
Hold on. I'm blowing more smoke for you.
Oh yeah, got a whiff then.
Okay, good. And then if anybody else got anything like a flower, ocean smell, can I just see a thumbs up? I'm stubbing this out and we're going to the lightning round, which is going to be Iwan's needs to prepare his question for one of the other two. And now this is like asking a boxer, Muhammad Ali at his peak. You're a ringer. We've seen you do this. You've got a lot of views on a lot of those shows. They're incredible. You pick 2 incredible experts from out in the community, one more of an experiencer, one more from either the scientific community or elsewhere. And they speak in the most civilized fashion and in the most depth that is ever possible for humanity. There we go. Okay, Iwan, who is your victim of choice?
Right. I think I'll ask Paul. Do we need to surrender all concepts to find peace?
That dovetails very nicely into that whole ego thing. I think we can keep our concepts, and then we can expand those concepts and begin to look through them. And I think by doing that, the concepts begin to transform into new ways of understanding. But, you know, just like the ego, concepts get a bad rap. You know, we need something to begin with. You know, it's like a sprinter needs starting blocks, you know, something to push up against. Concepts do that for us, just like the ego does and just like the body does. So these are good things and ways that we can have that ability to expand what they are and get greater understandings and wider and greater experiences.
We just had alarm bells go off. It was one of those double jeopardy moments where Iwan asked such a great question and there was such a great answer. He's going to get to do it again, but I'm going to buy time for him. He can still pick Paul a second time in a row. We don't know there isn't a third question coming from him, and it would have to go to Leanne if he goes to Paul twice. But I'm going to just do a quick quote on contrast. This is from a Netflix film from a long time ago, but everything is your instruction. In the end, love is what shows us life in different colors. Now, Iwan, question, you've got it, and you've got another person to ask. It has to be Paul or Leanne.
Okay, I'm going to ask Leanne. Something that's arising for me is, so I'm very curious. Do you think mindfulness has a problem with non-duality?
I think mindfulness has a problem with non-duality. I mean, I don't know if I'm in the mindfulness community enough to know whether the community at large has a problem with non-duality. But I would say in my own experience and practice, absolutely not. Our ability to be aware at every level of the contents that we are immersed in is really important. So I don't think anything can transform without awareness. It has to be brought into awareness first. And mindfulness assists us in becoming aware. One thing that's come up for me over the course of the conversation today is this idea of agency. I think at a certain point in the process of transformation, the unconscious contents, if you will, the things that run us, that cause us to suffer. Jung was famous for saying, you don't have it, it has you, right? The complexes in the unconscious, they come and they just they blow that ego wide open. Then all of a sudden we're in states of rage or states of anger or deep sorrow, and it came up, bubbled up out of the unconscious. We didn't have it. I think over the course of the process of transformation, as we clean the lens of perception, as we work on, the physiology, the emotional regulation, it's a huge component of it. What comes forward is this beautiful marriage, if you want to call it the ego, but the center, again, I like to call it the functional organizing principle, where then we have agency and choice of what we want to do with our concepts or the next thought or whatever content of consciousness that there is. So my hope would be that a mindfulness practice would be aiming people towards that understanding that would bring about the agency to utilize and again, words, I do think, because it's semantics, right? You have to know the definition of all these words that we're pointing to. But whether you call it the ego, the mind body, that we have that agency in form uh, to make the next best choice in the field of non-duality, to explore and be here as that one interdependent, interconnected, synchronistic experience of love, beauty, flow.
Now, I'm going to read two quick passages to buy time for Leanne. She's going to be asking somebody a question next. But at the end of these two passages, if anybody wants to put a hand up and just do a 20-second commentary, anything about a reaction to these two passages. I mispronounce everything. It's my opportunity for growth and expansion, which never stops. Siddha Katrapa, I do not know how far back, at least 1,000 years, I'm guessing. This quote is beautiful. Whatever the yogin sees is his instruction, and realization that all he sees is unborn. That is the most excellent guru. Innocence is the way to realize non-duality, for here the effects of virtue and vice are one. And one more quick one. Why is being the key to all of this? Just being with a capital B, to be or not to be Shakespeare. Being is believing in all. You do not need to be like anyone else, be you. Smile more, think less. Do not permit others to dictate your well-being. Own your own being in life. Love more and allow more. You can be happy now in this very moment without a single reason. Again, this is why it's not about words or concepts, which are often just another form of egoic thinking. Always keep releasing so as to not allow walls to be rebuilt, ego. What to release exactly is never that important. Those are mere details. Keep releasing. And wrapping up, ego likes to judge everything and build walls. Ego likes to offer knowing as a form of false security. Step away from this and return to a peaceful life. Follow your path in life one step at a time and enjoy it. Let go of perfectionists or defined behaviors such as roles. Embrace the often awesome life given to you and each one of us. Just be. Listen to everything, for everything around you is always your instruction. Okay. Any comment on that? If not, Leanne, the spotlight's on you. You get to choose who's receiving this question.
All right. That what you just read. Actually, what was that from? I'm sorry. What
The
was that?
second part was from listening to Angels, where I just saw balls of light as I typed back in 2014. So there's no way, if anyone knows me, there's no way I wrote it. But if you want to say I wrote it, I'll take complete credit. I typed. So it's just a lot of compassion, unconditional love, and shininess.
Beautiful, beautiful. I am going to ask actually Paul this question about about your own journey, Paul, in the development of self-compassion, in also obviously compassion for the collective or specific people perhaps around you, but was there a pivotal moment where you really understood self-compassion, that your own shadow or aspects of yourself that sort of needed that transformation from darkness to light, that you were offering self-compassion into your own system?
I hesitate to say this because I know it's going to piss off a lot of people. That is something that I feel like I've been in touch with my whole life. There are certain experiences like that that I seem to have been born with. That's one of them. Now, everything, when I mentioned earlier my near-death experience and then all of those doors of perception opening up afterwards, that's a whole different thing. It brought a greater understanding to me of things like self-compassion, and it brought context to it. But there were certain things that I just seemed to have had right from the beginning, and that's one of them. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off.
I was just
I
saying
know they go on
no.
retreats for, for weeks and weeks and weeks to cultivate self-compassion. And, this guy must be crazy.
Well, just moderator's note here. Paul's been on the show a few times. Leanne's been invited back. Iwan, you are absolutely welcome to be our February 2025 guest just after the panel. Let me know. But Paul has shared a lot panels on the shows. Please check out Leanne and Iwan's guest appearances as well. He had a long-time fear of death, so I just want to throw him under the bus. And he had to go through incredible amounts of experiences to get over that fear of dying that plagued him from a very early age. Paul, can you mention that for 30 seconds before Leanne grills Iwan with a very eternal question of man sort of thing? Paul, talk to us about the fear of dying and how from a very young age you had that, and it was the...
Well, yeah, I mean, that was that was another thing that I was born with. I can remember back to maybe when I was 1 or 2 years old having this intense fear of dying. Maybe that was something that helped me cultivate my self-compassion, because I, I I carried around so much fear for so many years that maybe that's kind of what brought my awareness to my self-compassion. Somebody who's living with that degree of fear, you know, I lived with it for my first 21 years before I began to address it. I had that near-death experience when I was 21, and then have worked in this field since then. But yeah, maybe there's a connection between that kind of fear and developing that sense of whether it's self-compassion or compassion for others. As you guys know, the death practice is prominent in all of the contemplative and meditative traditions. And I find that doing a robust death practice, oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, is something that deepens self-compassion and compassion for others. Really doing a deep dive into what is death, it really brings us to the gateway of consciousness, which then allows us to explore what are the real attributes, what are the qualities of consciousness, and how does that ignite those same experiences in the body so that we can actually experience firsthand that adage, as above, so below. Of course, there's no above or below, but once again, nothing wrong with duality as part of the game. So, what we want to do is bring that consciousness into the body. Most people think that's already happened, but it's not. We don't. That's why I say in the morning, we need to put on our bodies. People assume that we're in our bodies. My experience is that most people aren't. And so we need some sort of, approach to put our body on every day and make sure that we're in our body. And if that consciousness is in the body, I believe that what happens, my experience has been, what happens is it ignites those energetic systems in the body so that the body becomes a mirror of the consciousness.
Bye-bye, spider. Okay, Leanne, you got a question for Iwan. What is it?
All right, I'm gonna go with a big one here. Talk to me about the wheel of suffering. And if to be real specific about the question, like, do you believe in the end of suffering? Or is this realm somewhere where we have to keep sort of recreating that wheel? Or are we in the Buddha realm and in these beautiful mountains and lakes and this gorgeous manifestation that we sit in, talking about a body or a beautiful earth body here? Yeah, can we end suffering within the context of this realm that we exist in, that we're speaking in right now?
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. It's not a wheel. It's a loop. It's actually like the Mobius strip, and it exists in the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive function, choosing what to do about what we experience through our senses, our perceptions. It's right and left communicating. It's the lower primitive brain and the modern brain. It exists in a physical sense in the brain, but our felt sense of it is this continuity of the ego. You know, when you're young, you think you'll live forever. That's why they send them off to war, because they think they're indestructible. So it feels like this ego continues forever. And it's a kind of false infinity. And until we realize that we're on this loop, suffering continues. And it's when we fall off it, if you like, that treadmill, that we encounter that spaciousness, that vastness, the real infinity. And I think that links to your question to Paul as well, which is about this explosion of recognition of our innocence in this. That, for me, self-compassion is a recognition of our innocence, almost like the resurrection, of Jesus, that recognizing we cannot kill innocence. And that's a joyous realization.
Beautiful.
Paul, you're going to be asking questions next, but a quick interlude with a couple quotes. So Mother Teresa in 2015 said, "Compassion is like a deep breath for many." I think that just means people are zipping around so much that for most of us, a deep breath, a smile, a laugh, something is as close as we're going to get to our heart when we're rushing in the rat race. Plato said in 2015 as well, must have been a popular year,
Wait a minute. He said in 2015?
2015, he said this. Yes, somebody listened to Plato in 2015.
Oh,
Allowing, in quotes, is the torch to illuminate the cave's exit. This is compassion. So that's food for thought. And finally, this is what drew me to these three quotes. Mother Teresa again said in 2016, "All suffering is universal, not limited to the person experiencing it." I'll leave off with one more quick quote. This would come from the Buddhist community. I think it was on social media today. Choosing right and wrong, the whole discernment thing. But I'm going to lead it into an angel quote of, "There is no right or wrong, but there is right understanding." Paul, what question do you have for which person here? Or do you want to do a quick reaction to any one of those 5 little points?
well, I'll ask a question, because what I was thinking as you were reading those quotes was that, my gosh, there are so many ways of answering the content of what was in there. How could I possibly pick one? So I'm thinking, well, I got to pick one, but there's so many to pick. So I'll just go with the question. I think I'll ask Iwan about consciousness. Does consciousness have particular qualities? And if so, what are they? If not, then it'll be a short answer.
But he can talk about sensory or labyrinth theater if fallback, if he chooses the short answer.
Yeah, well, of course, theater is a great venue for the exercise of consciousness.
I think I'll answer your question in an oblique way. Have you ever stood on an empty stage? When there's no audience there, the stage has hosted all manner of tragedy and comedy, and has been all over the world, all over history, and it has that kind of memory of it. I don't know if you've spent some time on an empty stage.
Yeah, actually, in England, I
Uh-huh.
went to the stage where Shakespeare, I forget the name of it.
The Globe.
Yeah, and I stood there. Yeah, it was a cool experience.
Mm.
And there's an international ballerina. I got to plug the show, Angels, Positivity, and Love. I think it was episode 3 or 4, February of 2023. International ballerina, Berlin State Opera, like world class. Suzanne Purcell mentioned when there might be only 2 employees out there, it's hours before the opera performance ballet. She would lie on the stage, but she wasn't at the most receptive level she had been in her intuition journey. So she would only see movement way up above in the ornate ceiling or dome or whatever this is, but she would feel it. But her brain was at that point in life resisting tremendously the rest of what would have come for her. So something to what Iwan is mentioning. Iwan, back to you.
Yeah, there's one of my teachers, a wonderful Brazilian called Augusto Boal would call it the aesthetic space. And it's this place that is pregnant with possibility, with that power, limitless power. And I think that's what consciousness is. I don't think it has qualities. It's a mirror, and it's the source of everything that is created.
Nice.
So,
I like that. I like that.
but there is this benevolence, isn't there? Surprisingly, it's not neutral. You can use the word love, but again, that's so wrapped up in concepts. I prefer the word benevolence for some reason.
It's unique using it, and I like that because I like to get away from lingo as fast as possible. But with that, I got to give another quote before Paul asks Leanne the next loaded eternal questions of man sort of thing. Gary Zukav once said, "You change the way that you shape the light which is flowing through you by changing your consciousness." Paul?
All right, here's my question for Leanne. I thought about it like 30 seconds ago before you said I was going to ask Leanne a question. Because this is frankly something that I've pondered for many, many years. And so I would love to hear. Is there a difference between being and consciousness? And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Once again, if there isn't, then it's a short answer. If there is, I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are.
In my experience, actually, there isn't a difference. Being and consciousness are synonymous. Consciousness is the one and only reality that is. I mean, to be and is are interchangeable. It's the
Okay.
amness, the isness, the beingness, and that, yeah, is consciousness. I mean, the way we construct sentences in English, it we break subject, object, verb, but that very isness, which is beingness, is consciousness in my experience of it. And again, my experience way before I started, well, I was in a yoga room, so I was doing yoga asana, but before I ever studied like the philosophy or any of the liberatory traditions, I had what's known as a pure consciousness event. It was just this flash that lasted all of a second or two. Which in that flash was, yeah, consciousness is all there is, and it knows exactly what it's doing. So once I just started reading the Rig Veda and studying yoga and saw that the Rig Veda said, knowledge is structured in consciousness, and that system of thought also has consciousness as the I am, tat tvam asi, I am that, and the amness is the beingness. I realized that my experience was completely in alignment with what those systems of thought were teaching. So, yeah.
All right. Well, you've solved my pondering. I don't have to ponder anymore.
Yeah, go with it.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Although Nisargadatta would disagree, wouldn't he? I mean, interestingly, he would say that beingness arises in the womb, and consciousness predates beingness. Beingness is this it's this aliveness, but it's only in the mortal sense.
Yeah, I've
Just
heard that
throw
too.
that
That's
in.
good too. Now I'm even more comfortable. I like both of those answers.
Yeah, it's
Both.
almost like you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, just dovetail one thing on that. But consciousness already is being. It exists in its own beingness for being to then be birthed from it,
Hmm.
right? So it does, again, it could be a play of words, but it literally, consciousness is.
See,
And
this question, it's perfect. It's perfect for humans. It gives us something to do. It gives us the ability to write thousands and thousands of books for thousands of years. We need this question. We need to keep asking this question just so that we have something constructive to do.
and for thousands and thousands of dollars, and to do play on words, my answer to the difference between being and consciousness is 8 letters. Okay, here is the next question parallel to that, just being and consciousness.
I got that, Mike. I
Yeah.
just got that.
So same question, but different topic. Instead of compassion, consciousness, let's do compassion. But I'll buy everybody time because Iwan's going next after his sip. Here's 5 quotes on compassion. I think we could be here for the next 30 years with not one definition being the same as the next on what compassion is. Because in my opinion, or at least Angel's suggesting this, there's trillions of layers of compassion the more we grow and expand. Here's 5 random quotes, one from an angel named Dale. Compassion is just being and trusting the outcome to be of the highest intent for all. That is a very loaded statement. Mac, don't call her Mackenzie. Compassion is treating every moment with the awareness of a newborn baby. Millicent, compassion is treat all with kindness and love. Someone else said, unconditional love figure, compassion is a hug. And finally, Dull Knife, Native American chief, unconditional love spirit guide. Compassion is being kind to yourself and letting go of past failures and accomplishments in the now. Iwan, what is compassion?
Love the baby one, the innocence of a child. In non-duality, the tendency is to point out what we're not rather than what we are. And hopefully by pointing out what we're not, we eventually arrive at what we really are. I don't think compassion can be cultivated. And I'll piss people off too by saying that. I think it arises when we get glimpses of our natural state. And that is innocence. And it's funny because most of our suffering arises from this sense of responsibility for suffering. You know, the second arrow, the Buddhists call it, don't they? So something happens, but then we feel that we deserved it, or there's something we have to do about it, or we escape it. And for me, I had this dream where I'd murdered somebody, or I'd been an accomplice in a murder, and I felt this terrible contraction in the heart. And I woke up and I just stayed with that contraction. And then when I went back into the dream, it was found that this person we'd murdered wasn't dead at all. He was alive. And there was such an incredible, profound relief. I woke up and my heart had exploded. And it was this recognition, and it was an understanding of the power, not the Jesus story of the resurrection. What it's about is our fundamental innocence. We really are just characters in a play, and whatever crimes we've committed in this aesthetic space, on this stage, whatever failures we've had, it doesn't touch that innocence. It doesn't come near touching that innocence. And I think that's the basis of compassion for ourselves. I think compassion for others is a different thing. I mean, it's innate in the word. Compassion means to suffer with. So it's when we recognize that what this illusion of separation, this suffering creates it's the same for all humans. You know, the sadness is the same flavor for somebody who lives in China or Russia. The fear, it's the same thing. and that's what connects us.
Leanne, you're going to answer compassion in just a second. No pressure at all. But in 2014, Jesus said, "What is compassion about?" He answered, "Open eyes and open heart."
Oh, beautiful. I'm actually gonna give a definition that I'm stealing from interpersonal neurobiology. Compassion is integration made visible. And I love what Iwan said. It arises, but I'm also a big fan of practices. So I do think we can intend and point in a certain direction. I often say to my clients, compassion is hard won. You can't fake it. It literally arises from the integrative experience. It is not something that you can do. You can't act it. It's something that is hardwired on us that will arise once integration, once there's enough integration, something like that. But I do think that we can practice something like self-compassion. You just want to aim towards it, and that way you're intending it, clearing the deck, setting the stage for it. So then when it does arise, you're there for it in every way. But that would be my definition. Dan Siegel out of the Mindset Institute in LA, I quote him a lot because I think he's done he has an amazing body of work. And he coined the term, or says, integration made visible is kindness and compassion. And ever since I heard that, I just absolutely loved it. And again, I do think the integrative process, the transformation and integrative process allows the kindness and compassion to arise.
Paul, and that was beautiful, Leanne. Paul, we're coming to you for compassion, but quick quotes. Red Shirt Native American Chief said in 2014, another great year, life lessons lead to compassion. Another angel said, Red Shirt said, compassion to others can only happen when started with self. Plato said in 2014, slowing down is the key to compassion. And finally, Abe, the Abraham of old, an angel on everyone's team, compassion is not judging, taking action with no thought. Paul, what's your reaction to that? What is your just genuine insight on compassion or reacting to the others and what they've said?
Well, I mean, those are all good quotes. You know, they're all very descriptive of what compassion is. My experience of compassion is the same as my experience of interconnectedness. One second.
I didn't do it.
Sorry about that. Yeah, to me, once I started to experience how we're all interconnected with everything, you know, us and the universe and so forth and so on, it seemed to enhance my experience of self-compassion and compassion for others. There's so many great ways to describe compassion and self-compassion. And my personal experience has been that there are certain things that can get in the way of self-compassion and compassion, but that self-compassion and compassion they're always there. And it's more a process of getting rid of the dross than it is developing something that's already there. And so as we get rid of whatever is impeding that experience of compassion and self-compassion, my realization and experience was it's always been there. You know, and not just because I seem to have been born with that, but that's been the experience of many other people that I've talked to about these things who do practices. And they come to and understanding that, oh, wait a minute, this has always been there. I just didn't notice.
I'm going to read a passage in a second, and Iwan, you'll go next, but I'd like you to integrate in what you've been doing in the past to help people experience more and allow more, whatever the more is, and what you're doing now, and also what you're doing in the future with this. Leanne will be next, then Paul. The passage will take maybe 45 seconds, but before we do the passage, could you each put both your hands up like you're playing patty cake, if anybody knows what that is? But can you feel each other's warmth vibe through the screens? And you know what? We're not going to know who's who here. This is the highest intent, love and above, not this stuff, but this stuff. So if anyone starts to feel sparkle, warmth, energy through two screens, we're all of us in what, California, Arizona, Texas, and then the UK. Is anybody feeling anything on their palms? We're going beyond words. Good job, Leanne. And Iwan, that was a nod, yes? Beautiful. Paul, are you getting it as well? Okay, we just did something there. We don't have to stick words on it, but here are words to stick on Iwan in a second, and you'll have a beautiful chance to integrate, I'm going to use the word, your own practices, what you've been doing. You've got plays, some beautiful stuff that I'd love to hear about. These angels talking. There are not separate paths for mankind or separate worlds for individuals. One is one. Through awareness and owning the consequences of one's thoughts and actions, a person begins to see how all of life is truly interconnected in one. Faith in all can lead to a change in mankind. This is the path for all of man. This is about man bringing peace and joy to all. This is also about your personal growth in your life and finding the next stage in your soul's development, as well as the continued evolution of mankind. The greatest gift is allowing. All is growth and change. This is frightening for some. There's nothing to do here. Slow down the doing. Instead, breathe, smile, and relax. Appreciate all. Final bit. Compassion for all is life. This is also about acceptance for all. Regard others as yourself, generously and without fixation. Believe in all. It is much simpler than people think. Again, this is because this is not about thinking, but less thinking. Iwan, that quote, whatever that means, with your practice, your discoveries within, and you sharing the love that you have within, or compassion, or you, consciousness with all. Share with us this journey, but specific waypoints. This play, this item, what you're working on now, what we can expect from you in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with what came up to me in that quote and try and segue into something interconnected. That word, interconnected. We are mutually interdependent. That's the Buddhist phrase, isn't it? Which is why that question, does mindfulness have a problem with non-duality, was a bit loaded, because I don't think we're interconnected. Who's interconnected? Interconnected implies separate kind of nodes on a network. And that's a very comfortable place for people to be in, because it's like what I call the perfect distance. And compassion doesn't recognize that perfect distance. It's not a case that we're interconnected. We're not even one. We're just this. And everything arises in this, which is not interconnected, because there's no separation. So that's the non-duality kind of response to that. I can't say I feel it all the time, but what I do in my work somehow creates this. And the wonderful tool I have to do this is theater. We talked about eyes, lots of eyes in the universe. Where else do we see that? In the theater, what's called a multiple regard of the other. All these people looking, focusing their attention, that power of attention on one spot, and suspending belief or disbelief. But it's the same thing as suspending belief. I'm going to see something here on this stage, in this space, that is just going to be free of any limitations that I think I have in my own life. And yet it's a place we go to, we pay a ticket to go and experience this when we can experience it every day in our own lives. And to recognize that this is all a wonderful play just for us. So what happens if you mess around with that formula of theater, with a big audience and a stage and they just watch it? What if we created a theater where the audience buy a ticket and they turn up in this location and they walk along this path and they encounter these inhabitants? Then the whole space becomes the aesthetic space, the whole environment, everything around them. And then suddenly their own mind becomes the aesthetic space, and they see, well, this is a play. I'm a character in the play. Why is this so familiar? And that's that proprioception that is just so wonderful to behold and to witness happening for people, where there's this relaxation of the responsibility for all of this. And the irony is that when that idea of responsibility collapses, there's an ability to respond from the heart without the ego interfering and managing these distances in our supposedly interconnected world. It's just a collapse of all those concepts. And what I like, and my favorite feedback, is people can't speak. They just sit there, unable to speak about what they've encountered. So I went and studied mindfulness to try and understand what was happening to this audience that I were coming out with these reactions. And that's where I developed a theory called context-oriented arts. So it's not about creating more, it's about creating more context rather than content, more things, more concepts. It's about, one way I describe it is like we have this capacity as humans to point and name things. That's what makes us human. And that's the cause of suffering in some ways. Our ability to point and name something is different to us. But that same quality, that same ability allows us to do this. And this is the direction of my work. And there's no end to that destination. And those two sides of my work, the mindfulness and the applied theater or sensory labyrinthes, have come together in this curriculum that I'm piloting with NHS staff, nurses and doctors who are in the UK are suffering great moral injustice by being forced to not give the service they've been trained to give in compassion and care because they're just overwhelmed. And just being able to create that space for people to share without judgment, and to use the group exercises and the dynamics I've developed over several years is transformative in a way I haven't seen in a mindfulness course before. Because of the situation, this 8-week program with 2-hour sessions every week, nobody's managed to participate in every session. There's this sense of not being able to leave their team. There's this camaraderie, if you like, of staying with their team, even though they're desperately in need of some rest. So it's difficult for them to extract themselves. So most of them arrive, most of them are in 4 or 5 sessions, some in 3, but it's still having that transformative effect, which you wouldn't expect from a mindfulness course. So I've been going into why that's happening, and it's very simple. We're just giving glimpses of that raw mindfulness that's our birthright. And once we give our permission for us to stop and realize there's nothing to do.
Brilliant, Iwan. Brilliant. And I'll do the, I don't know what those diagrams are called that have all the words, but the bigger the word is, the more often it's used, if that makes sense. You see it in politics or about a social media post or a certain stories out there in politics, you'll see,
Word
vote
cloud.
being really, yeah, exactly. So I would like to just use that as an example for each person's approach to living this, that, and it's bigger than this, sort of a theme, it seems like, of the panel. Each person's going to have different words that are larger than others, and there's a circle, and there'll be stuff outside the circle. And then I'm going to point to the table underneath which that piece of paper is sitting on with all the diagrams. I feel like I'm Iwan right now, and say it's the table, but then maybe it's the room, but maybe it's beyond the room and beyond the building. Leanne, what is your answer to all of this, but tying in what you do for folks without mentioning New Thinking Aloud or that other program you've already mentioned, but you have so much other stuff that you do, you get to plug that other stuff.
Clear, I mentioned New Thinking Aloud, not so clear on the other program that I mentioned, but well, I'm going to sort of dovetail off Iwan a little bit here, because I'm also a big fan, proponent, experiencer of non-duality. And I think the non-dual teachings have a wide spectrum. And in my work, I definitely am concerned about both differentiation and linkage, because there can be certain practitioners who only link, and I'm in no way implying this is Iwan, but we did mention earlier about certain organizations, no names were mentioned, where the teachers end up, doing things that are out of integrity, because all of a sudden everything's one, and it becomes more actually solipsistic. There has to be a very, I mean, mindfulness, that's why it always has to sort of be in the mix, because excessive linkage can happen, and a level of enmeshment where we're back in the power struggle again. So that ability to sit in the seat of integrity, I would say, requires both differentiation and linkage. Yes, it's all one, but so I'm just basically advocating for terms like interdependence or interconnectivity, because then that allows us to see the pieces and not have them enmeshed, because boundaries are important. And maybe it's just because I'm a woman who's grown up in the, and there's a lot of, I don't want to over genderify it or overly point fingers, but as a woman, I am very sensitive for sure to this idea of differentiation and linkage. And my body of work, yeah, that's, I would say, one of the touchstones. But as we did mention earlier, transformation and integration is certainly the through line. And maybe that's what you're talking about, my founding Center for Transformation and Integration. For me, I'm in this transformative moment. One-on-ones I've done for years. I love working one-on-one, but now I'm sitting in the seat of a teacher a little bit more, and I'm developing a transformational coaching certification course. So that's what I'll be doing for the next couple of years, is training coaches in transformational coaching with an emphasis in somatic integration, because the body is all important. Again, we don't want the dissociation. If you have too much differentiation, now you're dissociated and you're not taking a comfortable seat in the body on the earth. But then also, if you have over linkage and enmeshment, then you don't have the clear discernment either to see what is, my path, what is my joy, what do I want to create. You're more lost to the culture or somebody else's story. You haven't been able to differentiate and touch into your own dharma, so to speak, your own path and life force. So yeah, my path is being carved in a new direction for sure. Because I've taught over the years yoga philosophy in many yoga teacher trainings, but now developing this course and training coaches is a new avenue for me. Very creative, and I'm very excited about it.
Brilliant. Paul, what's your reaction to everything so far? No pressure. And how are you making yourself available these days? I didn't do it.
I have a tendency to agree with whoever's talking.
I like that. Safe.
And so I'll leave it at that. What am I doing lately? Well, I continue to teach my 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which I've been doing since 1993 when I met John Kabat-Zinn. Before that, I was teaching a blend of mindfulness, Kaballah, and yoga from 1970 to 93. But I've also been spending more time and attention with a nonprofit group that I've been working with for about 8 years. And we provide mindfulness-based stress reduction, the MBSR program, based practices to schools. And the program is called Inner Explorer, so it's innerexplorer.org. And we're in front of about 2.5 million kids right now. And we've developed a curriculum that presents 8 to 10 minute audio-based practices, which is done by pre-K to 12 children from all walks of life. And I may end up spending quite a bit more time with that program. I've put a lot into the curriculum. And I did probably, I think it was maybe the first study back in the 90s. I did a 2-year study. I partnered with Arizona State University. I did a 2-year study where I taught mindfulness to first, second, and third graders. And it got published, and I'm told that it was pivotal in bringing attention and awareness and motivation to people all over the world to bring mindfulness into schools. I called it the Attention Academy. And so when this nonprofit group approached me 9 years ago, I liked what they were doing. They were integrating technology, making it scalable to millions and millions of people. I had been doing the old paradigm, going into schools, in person, doing it the hard way, but there were so many things to overcome there, such as teachers coming and going and all kinds of different things. So the idea of a technology-based program where all you have to do is press play and you're guided through an 8 to 10 minute practice every day, I warmed up to it, got involved, and now I'm getting ready to get even more involved. So I think that's probably the direction that I'll go, is more and more of the school mindfulness program, working with kids. But I'll keep doing my 8-week program too.
Beautiful. I'm going to mention Iwan's appearance on Angels, Positivity, and Love, the actual show, episode 42 in November of 2023. He had talked about early on going into schools, and I'd like to just mention that it was a beautiful bit of sharing from him. Please check that out. Leanne was episode 56, the beginning of 2024, February or so, when she was on the show. Paul, you'll just find on the guest list at the website. He's been on a few times in a few other panels. I have for everyone a choice of 4 quotes. If you could choose your favorite one, if you can even remember them, and then if you could give us a final closing bit. We are going to end though with I'll put up an angel photo or two, or Ananda Mayama, who said everyone is right. And I love that. I've never met anybody who says, I'm going to waste my energy today. I'm going to be purposefully wrong in everything I do for the next 2 months. Never. So I think we're all doing the best we can, spending our energy how we can, but somehow there's a little room for improvement. Here are your 4 quotes. Jesus again. Compassion is here for all. A person need only be open to receive. A new consciousness emerges. Details are not so important. Love is love. That's choice number 1, door number 1. Now, you could say E, all of the above, if you want. Grow your awareness, not your thinking. Be loved to all as often as possible. No more and no less. A bunch of angels. Blame them. Abraham. Abe, the Abe of old, an angel on everyone's team. Grandfatherly-like figure. He'll tell you he was a jerk when he was a human back in the day. Basic questions are eternal, like we've been trying to tackle here. Basic questions are eternal and a key part of what it is to be human. Finally, Chogyam Trungpa in 2014. I used to say Rinpoche, but I know it's Rinpoche now. Taking one breath is like taking one step. Both bring peace and harmony. Leanne, was there one that stuck out, or are you going to fall back to E, all the above?
I won't fall back to E, but they're all good. Number two for me. Right? Was it the angels?
Grow your awareness, not your thinking. Be loved to all. You like that?
Love that. Yeah.
Paul, you had compassion is here for all. The Jesus quote. You had grow your awareness, not your thinking. Angels. You had basic questions are eternal and a key part of what it is to be human. Abraham, or Chogyam Trungpa. Taking one breath is like taking one step. What's your answer?
Well, it's like who's ever talking most recently, that's the one I go with. So, on that list, the last one, because that's the last one that I heard.
Oh, spoken like a champion. Iwan.
So I'll go for number 3, Abe. I like that one.
Oh, nice. There was some diversity there. Okay, I'm going to put up 2 photos. You've got a choice. You can go pink or blue. Joya or Charlotte, 2 angels in light energy form. If anybody wants to get pulsing movement in a photo, we know that's not possible. I could pull up Audrey Hepburn's photo, though, a historical photo, and you could have the movement. An eyebrow goes up and so on. Receive what you can receive. It might be a reminder because you're going to get a last little bit of a talking point. You can get a prompt as if you're an actor on stage and there's a director behind the curtain motioning frantically with a few words, except this will be more love, less yelling. Feel what you can feel. Ask for a hug at home if you want a beautiful smell. Uninvented perfume out of Paris. Just a symphony of light. Any way you want to get it. Who wants to put their hand up and say, I'll go first? Paul, Leanne?
I'll go first.
What'd you get?
I was usually I'm vibing with Joy, but today I was very much vibing with Charlotte. And I think we're sort of heading towards a new moon, so that was sort of in there as well. But I was getting teachings of the earth, of Mother Nature, of again, it's oneness, but but I will stick with the interconnectivity of it as well. Us definitely being on this earth and just respecting the mother as she feeds us and guides us through our intuition and wants love for us, because that is at the basis. The love is at the basis. The compassion is always there. I am fully on board with that. So let's listen. Let's everybody make a concentrated effort to listen a little bit more deeply and embody that love and compassion. I think be beautiful.
I love it. Iwan, we're slingshotting to you, but you're getting a 3rd photograph out of the blue. Now, you're going to have to take this with a grain of salt that it's Abe, the Abraham of old, but you did pick his quote. He's on everyone's team, a grandfatherly, fatherly energy. Catch a little bit of pipe smoke, if you wish, around you just to go, whoa, what's going on here? And let a little influence come in. It's only going to be love, light, and some words. What do you got for us?
It's something you said, Michael. It's an uninvented perfume from Paris. I love that. And in that moment, I just got this smell from whatever's combined on that particular moment. And I just realized that is a unique smell that will never be smelled before. And it was just there in that moment. And every moment's like that, it's just unique.
We just went beyond words, and that, I have to say, wow, thank you, Iwan. That was just brilliant. Paul, you don't need photos. Who's coming in? What do you got? And you can't punt and say what Leanne said or Iwan. You have to come up with your own and own it in this moment. After all, there is no time.
Yeah, so I've just been getting a lot of heart stuff. It feels like just an expansion. And that's it. That's all I got.
I love it. Look, you three have been fantastic. We are technically signing off, but if you had a mantra to give us, I'm going to buy you time, because I'm doing it like we're at a concert, and I'm the most enthusiastic concert goer. Got to take me with a grain of salt. I'm enthusiasm. I don't know if I can double flick, but I'm holding Bic lighters. You're going to see flame, and we all know what a flame looks like on a Bic lighter. You're going to see gold, yellow, orange. We're going to skip the first step. I don't want to waste the gas. Go ahead and ask the universe, Abe for Iwan or whoever, Joy, Charlotte for Leanne, and whoever for Paul. Ask for a little bit of extra light on these flames. You could get sparkles, hearts. Put a hand up or a thumbs up if you actually see something beyond what we know is possible at the thinking level. Is there more in the universe? Ask for more. Allow for more. You got to actually do it from here. Set your intent. Ask for a little extra flame. Then we're signing off with a mantra from each of you that could fit on a t-shirt. So you got to think about that. 12 words or less. What do you want to leave us with? And then we sign off. Oh my God, I'm a genius. I did double flicking of a lighter. Now, Iwan, are you getting any extra light on top of the light? Breathe, relax, no try. I'm going to do Yoda's voice. Do not. There is no try. Leanne, are you getting anything? Let's see a thumbs up, a hand up.
I can't not get anything by sitting in presence with you three. It's always a pleasure. I can't not.
Anyone get sparkles? Anything? Anybody get any extra light outside of the normal Bic lighter? And if not, it's in the other shows, by the way. So, any hands? Anybody? You got to throw yourself under the bus when you put your thumb up. It
sun's right in my eyes right now.
I love. We got a diplomat. Okay. What do you want to leave us with? Who wants to go first with the t-shirt mantra thing?
I can go, because I have one that I'm about to put up on my new website, transformationandintegration.com. Root, rise, remember.
Nice. Paul or Iwan? Before Iwan gets the sunburn.
Oh, yeah. Look at Ian. Yeah. Iwan.
Always the same for me, actually, I think. And it's an invitation. It's what if, guys? All there is this.
I'll add one to buy time for Paul. On the front of the t-shirt says, I'd love to. On the back, it says, but I have to have coffee with an angel in the morning. Okay, Paul.
3 words: being and doing.
Oh my God. And not being by doing or doing by being. You've made a choice. Okay. Thank you all. What fun this was, and what extra vibes, at least I was feeling. I hope people felt it at home. Please subscribe, like, share. In the details, you can find these exemplary experts that have been on the panel. You can find all their details, and that's the most important. They have shows to check out and much more in terms of offerings. All of you have been just so graceful being on the show. I personally just want to thank you all.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you for the shares.
Yeah, always very welcome. Thanks for doing this, Mike and Leanne and Ewan, for joining together to do this. Really always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And we were interconnected for a good hour and 50 minutes, or were we? Till next time, hopefully we'll get you all back on one day. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.